What is each member of the Four Horsemen's type? No pun intended with member. As far as one, was there someone that said, "Oh, that's going to be Rick's because she's whatever, tall, blonde, and blue eyes"? Or did they have a profile there was kind of shot for?
I don't know that there was a real profile or a thought process that went into it. I mean, Flair just, hit the floor running and with the tray of kamikazes, and nobody had any idea where it was going to go from there. Tully was a bit of a ladies' man. He was very charming and very different than the persona that you might see on TV. Arn was kind of a down-to-earth, good old boy, and I'm me. I'm kind of tend to be the quiet one. And when you look around, especially like when Luger, where was Luger? Luger would be over against the wall, just standing holding his drink, kind of. And even more so than me, people didn't gravitate to him for some reason.
Interesting. What time does this chicanery wrap up here at Bennigan's?
It just, I mean, there would be a reasonable time where we wouldn't want to create enemies, and especially in Charlotte, because again, you're going to sleep in your own bed, and we have ample opportunity on the road where we're spending the night in a hotel, and when we called in the night, didn't really matter so much. I mean, I remember going to Chicago, and there was a place called Snuggeries, and these places have a tendency to change names over the years, but that's what it was called at the time, and that was our regular watering hole. And we had an old gentleman, African-American gentleman, that would be the driver of the limo every time that we came to Chicago. And he would say, "No, you boys aren't going to keep me out late tonight." "Oh, no, I'm not doing it." I don't even remember his name, sadly. But he would take us down to Rush Street, and they always knew we were coming because Flair would let them know well in advance. And there were other bars. It was kind of the nightclub area. And I remember a pizza joint across the street. I would get hungry and I'd reach a point where you think, well, I got to take a break, go across the street and get a slice of pizza. But we would go into all hours of the night, and that poor old guy would sitting behind the driver's seat of the limo, sound asleep, until we woke him up. We're ready to go.
You do not have to rise early again today to make it to Rock Hill, South Carolina, do you? Because that drive is about
45 miles round trip. Rock Hill was just over the South Carolina line, and it was a college dorm, or college gymnasium, as I remember.
What time do they need us there for TV?
TV a little bit earlier, because a lot more preparation involved. Usually we would tape an hour of syndication and would have some matches after to help draw the house, in addition to what was put on television, which normally would not be the main events. And in some cases, depending on the schedule, we'd be forced into a situation where we'd have to do 2 hours, do an hour, take a real short break, and do another hour. But that was more rare than the commonplace.
So we'd have to be there earlier than 5:30?
Yes. I don't remember exactly, but I would remember being there, probably in the building, 4:30, 5 o'clock, just because there was so much to do in terms of what was going to happen, interviews. The timing was more critical, because most of them were shot live to tape, and it was not, for the most part, something that was shot in segments and then edited. It just was very time consuming.
You're going to the office before this, I guess, because you have all day now.
Yeah.
So you'll be in the office.
Yep.
The other guys will be lifting weights or working out or having some fun.
Tully and Arn, Flair would maybe go to the tanning salon, or Flair probably had a tanning bed of his own later on. I think Tully did, maybe Arn did too. I go to the gym and work out, and that was my job was to go to the office. Their job was to look good. I didn't have to worry so much about that.
Did you travel together to the venue from home in Charlotte, or would you just all meet up there?
We would all go on our own. Wouldn't be uncommon for someone to bring one of their children too.
For the home shows.
Yes, or possibly their wife and one of their children would come sit there in the audience too.
This is another weekly stop for you because you're taping the syndicated television show for Mid-Atlantic. Is this? Do you get a kind of a private entrance from this place? Or is there some fan interaction outside again?
No, there's always some fan interaction, but the TV shoots were different in that they had a production truck that they owned that was there, so there's much more equipment involved. The lighting is much more sophisticated than it would be for a regular live event.
Are you guys doing promos during the day at all?
Those were done actually in the offices at Crockett. So, and I'm trying to think of what day we would do them, but there would be a day and usually depending on where we were the night before, but it would be coming in and maybe starting at 9, starting at 10, whatever, and run for several hours to do market-specific interviews.
So now we're at a TV, so there may not have been agents at the time, but somebody's definitely running this show from a timing standpoint. Would it be the Crockett's themselves, or is there a TV director who's telling you guys to have a 7-minute match?
Wayne Daniel was in charge of television production, and he was the one that went out when we did like the ambush of Dusty, when we did some of the other things we did. They were one camera shoots that he would do and then do the editing. He was very good at what he did, but he would be the one in the truck, and my job was to do the timing of the shows, to try and keep the flow going. And it was, I was more hands-on in the studios in Atlanta where at TBS
Saturday.
On Saturdays.
Yeah, we'll definitely touch on that.
And because again, they were done live to tape. And as great as those shows were, and as much fun as they were to do, and the ratings that they had, they were a lot of work, and we didn't always. It seemed like if there was someone who was running camera for the first time in their life, well, have them do wrestling. And so,
this is for the syndicateds as well?
And not so much for the syndicated, because they were regular people. And Jackie Crockett, of course, was the lead cameraman. So they were the regular people who knew what they were doing. But TBS was a different situation.
So that was a completely different crew?
Completely different crew. And it was all in-house. I mean, it was no remote truck involved.
Right.
And Jackie Crockett would run a camera there too, but you just would have novice cameramen, and that was you would have thought, as long as that show ran and as popular as it was, that you would have gotten the elite people, but that kind of logic doesn't always apply. But to answer your question, I would, and where it really became critical was the Clash of Champions specials that were aired live, because I would then have to take the commercial time and have to get into the content time, look at the interviews, and then know which matches you could allocate more time for or less time for. And I would do all that and be responsible, and the live pay-per-views as well, to be within the time frame. And Dusty, he was the creative guy behind it. I assisted him, but Dusty would be the one, and his total focus was just looking at the big picture, and I was focusing on the specifics. But a lot of times there would be a match that, would be maybe a borderline stinkeroo in Dusty's Dusty's pat line was, he would look at me and say, how much longer do I have to look at this?
As the booker at this time, is he present for the syndicated TV tapings?
Yes, he's hands-on with everything that's involved with television.
Okay.
Now, he didn't go to all the live events. I did. And so I would be the one to go there and make sure everything ran smoothly.
Are the Crockett's there for the syndicateds? Winthrop?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
What was the Horsemen's real clout, if any, with the Crockett's? Did you have some? Maybe you were filling an important role. Was there a real position of power?
I think probably there was, but to answer your question, what kind of clout do we have? I don't know. I think Ric Flair had a very, very special relationship with Jimmy Crockett. And there were times, because one of the things that made the Horsemen so special was a lot of times when somebody has drawing power, has heat, however you want to describe it in the business, the first time if they're heels that they get beat, it kind of takes the luster off them, and they don't have that same impact when it comes to drawing. With us, we were getting our butts handed to us every night, and in pools of our own blood, and as long as we could get back on television, as long as we could, tell our side of the story as to what happened and flash the championship belts and had those bragging rights, it was a magic formula that the fans would then get so mad at us that as bad as we got our butts kicked the week before, obviously it didn't sink in, and that obviously somebody's going to have to do it again. Right. And that was an ongoing thing. Where I got caught in the middle sometimes was, and Rick would have the tendency maybe to be a little bit more outspoken. And I'm sure there was probably I don't want to say a clash of egos, because Dusty certainly had an ego, and Flair had an ego. That's part of the makeup when you're so successful at that level. But Flair would get really concerned that night after night, almost implying that Dusty was a glory hound, and that the more we gave him, the more he would want to take, and that we were constantly giving. And Flair was of the feeling that somehow this wasn't right. We got to put something back in the bank on our side. We're going to lose this momentum. It's just going to drop, and we won't get it back. And so I would be in the office in one capacity during the morning. I'd get to the arena, or if only sometimes it was on the plane, where I would then have to hear these concerns in our locker room on the other side of what they looked at as maybe lack of balance. And sometimes it would get pretty intense. And it wasn't the kind of thing that I would go to Dusty and say, Dusty was, we had a very, very, I don't want to say even unusual relationship. Dusty, I can't say anything but good to him. I was with him in Florida before I ever went there. A lot of my success is because of the opportunities that Dusty helped make sure I had, and I feel that I contributed to the package too, but